this young lady.
Sorry. Can you speak up or put the microphone on? Because we can't hear out here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You can just shut those down.
I'm trying to talk very loud. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is a continuation of the poultry house discussion that started back in November of 2014. The Planning Commission's had a couple of meetings since then, on December 4th, 2014, January 8th, 2015. Just to recap what's happened over the last few months. There were some residents of the county who had some concerns with the number and size of poultry houses that were being constructed in the Backbone Road area of the county. The Planning Commission listened to that on November 2000, listened to their concerns in November. As I mentioned, had one more meeting and then requested that the county commissioners give you, the Planning Commission, the right to take a look at the zoning code as far as how it regulates poultry houses, take input from the public and other interested parties, and see if there were maybe any changes that should be made to the zoning code. On December 30th, 2014, the county commissioners did grant the Planning Commission's request to review the zoning code, at least as far as how it regulates poultry houses. They did ask that input be obtained from the Delmarva poultry industry before taking any further action, and that the Planning Commission report back to the county commissioners before scheduling any public hearings or anything like that in order to change the code. It's typically when we change the code, it's a text amendment, and you've been through that process before. We advertise in the newspapers, it's a public hearing, but the county commissioners, as I said, requested that before you get to that stage, that you report back to them just so they know, kind of what the status of the project is. I would like to mention and make sure everybody here understands that what the Planning Commission is looking at is the zoning code and how it regulates poultry houses. Our office has had a number of calls about specific projects regarding a manure incineration plant. Our office is not aware of any project like that that's being proposed in the county. So this discussion does not relate to anything about that. It does relate just to the zoning code and how it regulates poultry houses. Manure incineration plant is not part of these discussions. We don't know anything about any such project like that. So moving on, DPI has provided the Planning Commission with a report that they've entitled Best Management Practices for Good Neighbor Relations. We've included that as an attachment to my memo to you. Just want to point out that those are voluntary guidelines for growers and poultry companies. They don't have any force of law, but they did provide that to you for your consideration as you're moving forward and discussing this issue. A couple of things that they did include in their report to the growers and poultry companies. They mentioned that they encouraged a 300-foot minimum setback without a vegetated buffer for setbacks for poultry houses from existing residents on adjoining properties. Setbacks from the roads, 200 feet from the center line with consideration given to a buffer, and they did encourage vegetated buffers for poultry houses as they're being constructed. And also that tunnel fans be located, minimizing inconvenience to neighbors. Again, those are voluntary things. The Planning Commission, as you move forward, wants to give consideration to that. If you wanted to include things like that in the code, because although we have setbacks from roads and residences right now, it's not exactly the same as what they recommended. And we do not have in the zoning code right now regulations regarding tunnel fans or landscape buffers. It's going back again to the November and December meeting. You've gotten input from Michelle Merkel from the Food and Water Watch organization. She had provided you with a summary of recommendations from residents along Backbone Road, and we've included that as attachment 2 to this memo. That summary raised concerns about health, impaired water quality, decreased property values, and inadequate setbacks. They also did recommend that the Planning Commission recommend that the county or request that the county commissioners convene a stakeholders group to review the zoning code's regulations for poultry houses, and that a moratorium be placed on new poultry houses until the county's review is complete. Since that time, on April 24th, 2015, so just a couple weeks ago, we notified all the interested parties that we were aware of, and we told them that it wasn't anticipated that there would be any public comment tonight. So as a result of that, we asked that if they had any input they'd like to include, that they put that in writing. And we have received some written materials that we provided to you over the last week or so. That includes letters from Linda and Charles Catone, Elizabeth Brightman, Mike Krettel, the Maryland Farm Bureau, representing the Maryland and Somerset County Farm Bureau, Thomas Kirchner, and Kathy Phillips on behalf of various Somerset County residents and organizations, and we've given that to you for your consideration. I don't know if you've had a lot of time to review some of that, because some of it did come in just the last couple of days. I did assure most of those people, or the ones that I had an opportunity to talk to, that even though this has been going on for a few months now, that this is not the end of it here. If this process continues and if there are any proposed changes to the code, that public hearings have to be held by you and the county commissioner. So even though there's not anticipated to be any public input tonight, or at least verbal input, there will be plenty of opportunities for that in the future. Also attached to the memo that we sent to you was a summary of zoning requirements for poultry houses contained in our zoning code and from other county zoning code that you could use for comparison purposes. I think that kind of summarizes what we have right now. A lot of this you've seen before, but just to summarize, the county commissioners did give you their approval to study the zoning code, how it regulates poultry houses. I think you have a few options right now. If you believe that the zoning code should be changed, then you can identify some changes that you could forward to the county commissioners for their review, because they have asked for that before you actually advertise for a public hearing. Or if you believe that the code is adequate as it is now written, you could make a recommendation, or a recommendation be given to the county commissioners that no changes are supported by you. And then the third option, you could continue to review the information provided, especially since a lot of that has come in the last few days, and some of it was pretty extensive. And you may want to consider having a future work session, like what we've done in the past, to go over a lot of this information that's been given. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of where we are. I'll be glad to answer any questions or just turn it over to you for comment.
All right, at this time,
And one quick thing, can you do me a favor? I know you're taping, but if you could turn the spotlight off. I don't think you're aware of it. Your phone.
No.
Your
Oh, I'm
flashlight's
sorry.
on
Oh, my
all the
God.
time. That's why
I'm
I'm like,
sorry.
wait a minute.
I'll put it there.
It's hot enough in here. I don't want to be in the spotlight.
at this time, this
Thank
group,
you.
You're
this
welcome.
group needs, this commission needs to get together and make a lot of decisions. The more we look into it and the more we think about it, and again, we have not met since you were here last. We have a lot of discussions, and believe me, the people on this commission think for themselves. And what I hope happens here tonight is that we explain where we're coming from, where we want to go from here, what we might want to do, and I'm just gonna throw the meeting open, and who wants to start talking?
Go ahead, Carol.
There are very diverse views on this commission, believe me.
Okay. I think I would like to ask Gary. We decided, we asked the commissioners if we could review this perhaps we're going to do that, I believe that we as a commission should request that if you have the authority to do so, that a moratorium be placed on granting permits for any further chicken houses on a parcel, in my opinion, above 2. I mean, right now, farmers have all had farmed, have had chicken houses on their property next to their homes and everywhere else. It's just that it's current that it's quadrupled or 100%. If you have the authority to put a moratorium on permits for any more than 2 poultry houses per parcel,
Is that for
that
every
you do
farm?
that.
So if you have an existing operation, you can't expand?
Not while we're reviewing this.
I,
That's what my thought is. If you don't have that authority, could we request that the county commissioners do that? Can we send a letter to them requesting that they do that? Or, I mean, my suggestion is 2, the rest of the panel may not.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't have that authority. I think that would have to be something that came from the planning commission to the county commissioners for them to do.
Well, I say to my fellow commissioners that I believe that's something that we should do to start with. Because I think we have a lot of information to review, and we need time to be able to do it thoroughly. And I feel that under the current regulations, that anybody who owns agriculture land and wanted to even consider doing a mega farm or whatever, that they could, at this time, they can make their application for permits. And we would not, anything we do here would not impact that, they would be green.
I agree.
I can't say I'm in total disagreement, but I think 2 chicken houses, one, just the statement 2 chicken houses is applicable. You know, I believe we've got 140-foot houses. They're technically one house wall to wall.
So
No,
that
I
would
mean,
be- so
here's the
that would
thing
be
though,
chickens.
you're gonna shut down everyone who's saved up, and I'm going back to 20 years ago when I bought my farm. My wife and I were saving up, waiting to sell our home so we could afford to have the down payment to start our home operation. 2 houses, first of all, 2 houses probably wouldn't have been approved because it didn't cash. Even back then, the houses are much larger. And I'm not saying I'm against either the change or the restrictions getting
I'm not
more
saying-
stringent, but I think you're looking at, it's very, how's the best way to put it? I just think that you throw 2 houses out there, I wouldn't even say
I'm being very
upon review.
restrictive for this temporary
You'd
period
shut
of
down,
time.
you'd shut down pretty much
I'm being very
everything.
restrictive for this temporary period of time.
Well, you're using the word moratorium, which means there's no one allowed to build a poultry house above 2.
More than 2.
Which
At
we
this time.
let's,
Until
first we have to
until
go
we
to square
decide on-
footage,
Until
because
we
you-
decide on all these other limitations. Right now, we haven't.
but I've been looking at these limitations for the last 2 or 3 months
The only
and before
limitations we
that,
had
in
were
every
200
letter.
foot setbacks. And they
No.
say from the poultry house to the other house.
But we're here to
We
make
limit it
changes,
to the
not stop. I
property
think
line.
we've had ample time to review information that's been given, not completely, but I think to say we're not gonna approve anything rather than say, you know, above a certain amount, we wanna look at it on a case-by-case basis. Because if I own 200 acres and I wanna build 400 chicken houses and there's nobody nearby, then why the heck would we wanna stop them from building chicken
Well,
houses?
I think they would.
And if everyone in the county said, it doesn't bother me,
Glenn, would they not, or Gary, would they not be, have to be approved through special exception?
no, you're putting a moratorium, a moratorium is a moratorium.
Anything, at this point, anything would have to be approved other than, would it be special exception for these multiple?
I mean, right now they're not, as long as you meet the code in certain districts, poultry houses are allowed. If you're trying to tie that in to a moratorium, I don't know how that,
Yeah.
we probably have to get a legal.
I'm just
opinion.
thinking that we need to set some kind of restriction that these huge numbers of permits can be applied for and approved before we even have a chance to do anything. I mean, this came to us in November, we had a meeting in January, we haven't had a meeting since then for us to be able to discuss it. You know, we waited 3 months for DPI to give us their thoughts. I thought we were supposed to get something from the health department, we have not received anything from them yet. I mean, we don't have the information to make any kind of a decision. And I don't want to be too restrictive, but I don't want it to continue as it is right now.
I mean, we could
I feel
make,
strongly
you could technically make changes. Again, it's not that I disagree with being concerned and trying to have some control while we come up with something that's final. And again, it's not, here's the thing, moratorium, and we went ahead, if we had put a moratorium, we never would have made any progress on really a lot of the things we've ever accomplished in the last 10 years, because nothing would have been done. The people would have been satisfied that you can't build poultry houses, and we would have been looking at information that's the same as what we have today.
This would only be.
The health department does not regulate agricultural manure or any other outflow. The health department for this
It could be
county.
specified until we make a decision whether we are going to change our zoning code.
So why not do site plan review and let's do our job instead of just pushing it off to another day? Site plan review, I mean,
What you're talking about is moratorium. The moratorium will last, in your opinion, I mean, I'm asking you this, I don't understand. The moratorium will last until we come up with a document.
Until
I don't
we,
want to see a moratorium forever.
I don't either, and that's not my intent.
But to have it until we come up with a document.
Do we want to set a timeline for ourselves? That would be fine.
I have a question. From the time that the person asks for a permit, how long does it take before the permit is granted?
That's a hard question to answer.
3 to 6 months.
No, 1 year.
10 months.
And it is.
and it does
10
vary,
months.
thank you very much, because everyone's got their own experiences,
Vary.
but it doesn't get it's not gotten any easier, because it used to be 3 days. There's a lot of restrictions that have already been placed. You brought up a lot, and I went through our minutes, and I'm trying to kind of address the questions you brought up, distance between poultry houses. We can do that as a commission, but sitting back and saying we're not gonna do it, and we're just gonna come up with a document that can blanket the whole county. We've got a large county. We're not Newcastle. We're not, we've got the whole Eastern Shore to take into account. And to say that we can't do site plan review, if we can't handle site plan review, then we shouldn't be sitting up here.
Just a comment on moratoriums, there's probably, I don't know, dozens of poultry houses in the pipeline right now that people have put a huge expense in, gone to their
Well, that would be
bankers,
exempt. You
you know,
can't
doing their,
control.
Yeah, you can.
and I don't know if she's talking about putting all those on hold or limiting it to, you can have 2, but the rest of them go on hold. I don't know what her.
Can you legally go ahead and, if someone's been granted a permit, revoke it?
I mean, you can ask the county commissioners to do that. I think the county commissioners would have to make a decision as to who the moratorium would apply to, if they've applied to Larry Fikes for his office. So they might have to start there.
Okay, I think we need to move, we've got that point across, I think we need other points that we can discuss. Anything we want about setbacks or fans or buffers or any other concerns. I think we got that.
Just remember, these are law-abiding, tax-paying citizens who haven't broken any laws, who have paid their taxes and under the rules and regulations have a right, in my mind, to do, and I understand your point about the rush here to get it done before something we do. But these people's livelihoods and their businesses, and we've got businesses in Somerset County that are building chicken houses, that are employing people, that are paying taxes.
Okay, so they build 2 of them, or maybe 3, I don't know, whatever.
But the thing is, you're coming up with a number, and that's what kind of bothers me, is you're actually coming up with a number that has no value. 2 houses means nothing. You can't tell me how many birds go in there. 2 houses may not require a CAFO, which no one's disputing a CAFO. There's MAFO, but that's why we're here. But the first thing is, let's, before discussion, to recommend we just have a
I
moratorium.
have not written anything, and I have not made a motion.
Okay.
We are under
Beating up on
discussion,
you.
okay?
Well, that's why
I'm just presenting the other side, that's all.
Right now, I looked this up today. We have 67 houses in the pipeline in Somerset County that have been approved and stamped and either are on construction, have poultry in them, or are getting ready to go under construction.
How many did you say? I'm sorry.
There are 67 houses. There are, I think my arithmetic's right, there are 4 6-house sites. And that includes the one that Billy brought all this issue on Backbone Road. I think there's another one on Backbone Road, but there's a couple more. There are 4 6-house sites. There are 6 4-house sites. There are 5 3-house sites. There are 1 2-house sites and 2 1-house sites. That's what's in the pipeline. That was probably, most of them were in the pipeline when this issue came up, and they would have probably had a lot of construction done if, number one, if they could find somebody to do it. And the weather has been a tremendous hindrance, and there'll be a lot more progress had we had better weather.
Do you have the number of birds for those? Is there any way to?
I would say those, this is off the top of my
Okay,
head,
I know, I'm not-
but I would say you're talking 40, 45,000
Each one.
each one.
Are these the big ones about the 600-foot job?
I can't give you the exact dimensions, but I'll just say 36 to 40,000 square feet, somewhere along in there. I'm just using ballpark figure now.
No, that's right, and I think from now on, it would help if we just discuss it in square feet, because anyone can change the number of birds that they grow by the age. So if we go by square footage, it makes a little more sense, because the industry bases their growth off of that, so anyone else is gonna be looking at it per square foot. Because if we limit it by bird, then all of a sudden, someone can go in and just grow large bird and slide out under that, and someone who's growing Cornish, you know, would be penalized just because they're growing a younger bird. So if we can go by square footage, it would just make a little more sense.
So out of your 17 sites, I didn't start counting till you got halfway through there, but for 17 sites, there's 2 that we may have questions over, and the other 15, we haven't heard, the office hadn't heard any concerns over. Well,
There's really 2 basically that have drawn most of the attention in the county for opposition because of their size and location.
16,
I think that's
17,
what
18 sites.
Kevin's asking.
Yeah, there's
Which is
18
correct,
sites
right?
that construction's taking place.
Right.
And of those 18 sites, 2 of them have caused public outcry. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Have they actually, they're in the pipeline, have they actually started construction?
Some have.
You know,
Some are in the process, some will be placing birds next week, some will be placing birds next year.
Various things.
Hopefully for the.
I mean, without a moratorium, he suggested every one of these houses that cause all these concerns are gonna be built, and then a year from now, there'll be another 67 houses that people will be fighting.
Well, that's why I said if we're gonna, I mean, obviously there's, you know, everyone's gonna have to understand, there's gonna be, something's gonna happen, because it's being required. At this point though, I look at the 67 houses divided by 17 sites. Your average site is under 4 houses per site, and it seems to be houses 6 and above are the ones that have drawn all the attention. And that's why I said, at that point, rather than a moratorium, you know, maybe we put, you know, I don't wanna put the number on it, but maybe we put it at 4 houses. And again, 4 houses is incorrect, it would be the square footage. Anything above a certain square footage gets reviewed for site plan approval, rather than a resounding no because you're too big. Because it actually might be in an appropriate place in our county, you know, and there's a whole list of things, and we need to address setbacks based on their specific location. We can't put a blanket over everywhere. If it's next to a housing development with 40 homes, 400 feet isn't enough. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's, you go specific.
Site plan can, would we have the authority not to approve a site plan.
Yeah.
Under our current law, we don't, no, there's no.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if we recommend that it requires site plan approval above a certain amount of square footage and amend the zoning code to read that way at the public hearing, I don't know why someone who wouldn't want at least that as a start, because that's the proposal for a start. That way, you don't stunt the county's growth, you don't hurt our small and our young farmers, you don't hurt the farmers that just worked their butts off for the last 15 or 20 years to get one paid off, and they need to build or expand, or their kids are growing. We have enough children that don't want to get into farming, so we don't want to create a situation where all of a sudden someone who just doesn't know about chickens is going to say, your kids can't farm, you're going to have to stay at home for now, or go off and get a job away from the Eastern Shore, because they can't stay in the family business. Because I'm sorry, 4-house chicken farm doesn't support me and all 4 of my kids with their spouses moving in with me, and then and my grandchildren on top of it. I don't have it yet. But that's why I said, I think we're smart enough as a board. If you need information, I'll find it for you. If I don't know it, I'll get it. I'll get someone to give it to you. But I really think, obviously, I mean, there's some that are maybe in the pipeline that we haven't seen that we never would have approved. Wouldn't you have rather had some way to go ahead and look at that? I just think it makes more sense. And if it is going in next to a subdivision, then there would have been some relief and there would have been a public hearing over 4 houses. You know, we can't promise the world. We're not here to promise the world, but we're also not here to take away the land rights of everyone who's fought to get what they have through a terrible economy, and families who've fought to keep their farms through adverse conditions, to just say, we're gonna stop it right here because we don't know. Because in my opinion, we do know.
Glenn, I'm sorry, but I really think you are exaggerating what I have requested that we do.
I can tell you, anyone in the poultry industry heard 2 houses and they wanted to go outside and throw up in the park.
Well, I did not, I said.
And I know it's just a suggestion, so I apologize.
Just a suggestion.
You know.
And I'm not trying to